Well, good morning, Ward. Good morning. Welcome on a beautiful Aspen morning. I'm Greg Anderson, and if you're a little chilly, just sit next to each other. We do have we have a new boiler and we have a new kind of auxiliary blower, but it's not quite hooked up yet, but it will be next Sunday. So, the main blower, the main furnace is working. It's just not as efficient as it will be, hopefully Monday or Tuesday. So come on back Wednesday or so, and we'll be warmer. Get warm with each other. Nicholas will be back next Sunday as well. He's been in England with family and also with his mother, and has recently honored his mother-in-law, or Heather's mother. And we're launching his book, not only around here, but in England as well, in London. And I can't say it right. Maggie's corrected me. Norwich. Whatever you said, that's where he's going to be. There are a number of announcements in our bulletin. Please, observe them all the weekly things. Every day there's something great happening here, which is listed in the bulletin. Want to point out that there's a new yoga therapy series on the back of your bulletin by Yvonne Soroka. And then they're starting, along Nicholas and Michelle and Beth Shoemaker, will be doing a new thing, conscious parenting. So and all those people who would like to be conscious of it. Is that an oxymoron? I mean, can you be a parent and really be? Okay, good. Well, good title. And then we have a gallery downstairs. We check in with Tom Ward and anything, but it's a high school show, and they are going to be adopting. You can to support the high school program. The money does go to the high school. The adoption is to support this wonderful program, having these young people here in the gallery. 75% goes to the art department, and the goal is to adopt all. There's 102 pieces there, and to adopt all of them. And to date, half of them have been adopted, so there's 50 more to go, and that would be wonderful to support this great program of high school artists. And please enjoy that during our reception downstairs as well. And we are grateful to have Ellen Stapenhorst again with us this morning. She's been a wonderful friend, and I just double-checked with her. We've been friends, we determined, for 47 years. We were in kindergarten together. Her music is terrific, and not only is a very wonderful talent, but her music is always so personal and meaningful and spiritual. And not only will she be singing here today, but next Sunday she'll be doing a very special concert here at 4 p.m. entitled 2020. Where'd you come up with such a clever name? 2020 Vision, music and stories of peace and hope. Very meaningful time. So that's next Sunday. Put that on your calendar. Shelley Franklin is so creative with our flowers here. And today, those flowers have very special meaning to the Franklins. David Franklin, Shelley's husband, David, is with one of his oldest friends of 50 years today. His name is David Little, and he is celebrating a birthday today. And it's just a very special time. David Franklin is with David Little, and I believe that's in Denver? Yes, okay. Thank you. And they're together today, and it's a very important time for them to be together and of sharing their 50 years of love and happiness is at David Little's very special birthday today. We think of them from here at the chapel to them. And speaking of many years, Les and Judy Wyson are here today. It was a couple days away, January 9th, 20 years ago, that they were married at the chapel by Tom Sharkey and myself. Stand up and let's give them a hand. They have 20 years. They've been attending the chapel a great deal over that. They were in Texas when they got married, but they have recently moved to Colorado Springs and made the trip over here for their 20th anniversary. So we'll greet them and celebrate and congratulate them on their 20th. Lowell Cattle and Lexi Potamkin are leading the chapel committee for the chapel's next 50 years of planning, and here's Laurel.
Good morning, everybody. Just a quick update. We're in the final 6 days of the Together the Chapel online survey. Has anybody gotten an email about that? Okay, we'll stop doing that. The survey, if you haven't taken it, asks how the chapel lives into those 6 core values that we talked about during the Pebble poll. So if you haven't taken it, please do. The good news is we're up to 260 survey responses, and we're just thrilled with that. A week ago, we had about 60, and there were some very nervous 2 a.m. emails about that. So thank you all for coming through this week. As we say back home, y'all done good. And there are a few of you that are not internet users and mobile phone app users to do those surveys electronically. So if there's anybody here who would like a paper survey, it's 3 pages. Maggie can hand one out to you, and you can leave it in the red box at the back of the room or downstairs after the service. And in these final 6 days, we started thinking, wouldn't it be cool to reach out past the immediate chapel community? So in your chairs, if you feel called to reach out to other people in your world, at the grocery store or at your, ice hockey game or wherever, and invite other people in our valley to weigh in on this. Everybody gets a say in how the chapel serves our valley. So these are cards to pass out to anyone who you think might want to take the survey. And thank you all so much for helping shape the future of your chapel.
Thank you. And like that in the future of your chapel, this chapel does belong to everyone. I always used to say, and it's kind of if you've been around, you've heard me say it before, because there's no, the hardcore insiders, there are no outsiders. Everyone is part of this chapel. If you're here for the first time, we want to thank you for being here. If you've been here coming for 47 years, we want thank you for that too, or 20 years. It's very great. And it's terrific to have a special guest this day. I'm so grateful to be here, and there's so many wonderful people who are part of this. It just goes on and on. But 2 people who are great who brought our special speaker here, Lexi Potamkin, another friend for many, many years, and Phyllis Scruggs has been very helpful in doing this too. So, Lexi.
So I just wanted to share a story of how I met our speaker today, Dr. Jay Kumar. And it's really a full circle. There's been many full circle experiences this week that Jay has been in our wonderful community. But it started back 2 years ago. Our daughter, Allura Potamkin, went to Chapman University. She attends Chapman. She's a sophomore there. So I've met some wonderful people at Chapman. I would say I have a handful of really close friends now at Chapman University, and including these 2 extraordinary women. One is Gail Stearns, and she's the dean of the Interfaith Chapel there. Close friend of mine, turns out, full circle, she's a close friend of Cynthia Bourgeau. And I recently put Gail Stearns back in touch with Cynthia Bourgeau. She's working on her 3rd book and interviewed Cynthia, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought that was a very interesting story. And then Cheryl Bourgeois is head of development, and she's become a very close friend of mine. And one day they called me and they said, we love your books. Would you be willing to come to Chapman University and speak? And Gail Stearns teaches a class on mindfulness. And her colleague, Dr. Jay Kumar, teaches a class on happiness. And my first response was, gee, when I went to college, I wish they would have had classes like that for me, right? I mean, those are tools we can use for the rest of our lives. So I went out to speak, and I spoke at Gail Stearns' class, and I actually did the metta meditation that some of you have heard me give here at her class. And then I went to Dr. Jay Kumar's class, and I spoke about the endless knot, how we're all together, and I gave that analogy of the pencil, and you've heard me speak about that. But before I got up and spoke at Dr. Jay Kumar's class, he said, well, we have a guest speaker today, and before she gets up and speaks, I just wanted to share a story with you. And he gets up in front of the class and says, 20 years ago, I was going through a very difficult time in my life, and I walked into a bookstore in San Francisco, and I was drawn to this book. And I read the book, and it really changed my life. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, gee, I want to know what the title of that book is. That sounds amazing. So then he holds up my book, What is Spirit? I was deeply moved by that introduction, And that's just another full circle connection. You know, I'm looking out and seeing Jeff and John, our dear friends, and they know Erica, who knows Jay. And it's just, you know, life can be so magical sometimes when you get into that flow and things just come back around, back around, back around. So then I called Phyllis, my dear friend, and I said, Phyllis, what if Aspen Center for Living Peace helped sponsor Jay's visit here? And she said yes. So Phyllis, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Jay has been here all week. He spoke at the District Theater, and he spoke to almost 600 people in one day. It was the faculty, students, and then parents and students again at night. So that was day one. And then he spoke at Explore Bookstore. He spoke with the local YPO. But he said what's nearest and dearest to his heart is speaking here at the chapel, a spiritual home for everyone. So we're very happy to have Jay, and I will officially introduce him in a minute. But I just wanted to share that story first. Thank you.
Thank you, Lexi. We are indeed all interconnected. And speaking of being here for a long time, I want to thank Susan Nicholson for being here this morning. She's been here almost that length of time. And I want to thank Heather McDonald for all that she has done to keep the chapel going while Nicholas has been gone for the last 3 weeks and doing this wonderful job on putting this bulletin together with a number of factors to it. Let us continue our worship. Oh, the children. Children, we have children. They can be excused at this time. So anyone, children want to go downstairs for Sunday school, feel free to do that at any time, and they'll be downstairs. Will you join with me on the opening of your bulletin with this very brief call to worship? I'll be the leader, and you are the people. Spirit of life and love, bring to us beauty, the sun and the sky, the mountains, the valleys, the streams and the fields, the joy of the new day, this new day, and new year. And together saying, may we who are gathered for worship be empowered by God's love to weave new patterns of truth and justice into a web of life that is beautiful and wise. Ellen.
Uh-oh. between the temperature and whatever else. Here we go. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. We're up to good. We help each other. If someone's in need of a friend or bread, they will be fed. They will be cared for. It's not so hard with those we know to lend a hand and help them grow. Don't be afraid to change your mind. The strongest thing is to be kind. Oh, give us wings to rise above, that we may see all that we love. This fragile earth, these broken hearts are all a part of what we're made of. Stardust and dreams, these crazy schemes, the hope and feelings may be enough. Around the world, 7 billion stories, each want a soul in all its glory. Don't be afraid to change your mind. The strongest thing is to be kind. Oh, give us wings to rise above, that we may see how much we love this beautiful world we hold so dear. Just glad to be here in this beautiful world.
I think we're getting happier. Thank you. The scripture in the bulletin here is obviously the Beatitudes that is represented in our windows here. And on a rare occasion, the Greek word is mirakoios, which means blessed. Sometimes people have interpreted that word as happy. So in light of our theme this morning, just see what it's like to say these words, because a happiness is a deeper happiness and blessedness. So I just use that because on occasion people have translated that word. And of course, they were first probably spoken by Jesus in Aramaic, and that leads us into the prayer, which is an Aramaic English derivation of the Lord's Prayer, but Matthew Fox, who spoke here a little bit ago, has adapted that as well. So that will be the prayer. But I'll read the scripture, and then we'll say the prayer together. And think that it goes in this order of the windows. Happy are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Poor in spirit could also be interpreted as the humble, the meek in spirit, which leads to the other one. Happy are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Happy are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Happy are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, they shall be filled. And happy are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And happy are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And happy are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And happy even are those which are persecuted, but for righteousness' sake. Let us say together this prayer in English. O birther, Father, Mother of the cosmos, you create all that moves in light, and your name is hallowed in silence. Your rule springs into existence as we reach out to embrace all creation. Let all wills move together in your spirit as stars and planets swirl through the sky. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight, subsistence for the call of growing life. Lighten our load of secret debts as we relieve others of the need to repay. Steer us from the false self and lead us to the true self, so that we may give to the self of others. Amen.
This song was inspired by some of the words of Martin Luther King. We're coming up to next weekend is the celebration of his birthday. And in one of his speeches, he said, he was talking about, don't worry, I'm not going to read it all. This call for a worldwide fellowship that lifts neighborly concerns beyond one's tribe, race, class, and nation is in reality a call for all-embracing and unconditional love for all. He said, when I speak of love, I am not speaking of some sentimental and weak response. I'm speaking of the force which all of the great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life. This ain't no sentimental cakewalk, though sometimes it's as easy as pie. It comes from digging deep down inside, then reaching up to the sky. I have a dream that we can live together. The world can work for everyone. I have a dream, it's coming true now. Love is the only way how. The power of love will show us how. The way I'm living my own life, the first step in learning to care, then joining others with our differences, the next step in leading us there. We have a dream that we can live together in peace and joy and respect. We have a dream, it's coming true now. Love is the only way how. The power of love will show us how. We are given this beautiful world, more life than we can comprehend. If we can truly love ourselves and each other, we'll love the whole world without end. We have a dream that we can live together. The world can work for everyone. We have a dream, we're living it now. And love is the only way how. The power of love will show us how. We have a dream. We have a dream. We have a dream. The world is working now. Love is the only way how. The power of love will show us how. The power of love.
So before I introduce Jay, I want to make an announcement that after the reception, we're coming back up here at 11 o'clock, and Jay will be available to really dive deeper and talk to you and answer questions and talk more about his book and more about happiness and how it relates to you personally. So I really recommend you come back up here. It'll be facilitated by Michelle. It's going to be really beautiful up here at 11 after the reception. So Jay Kumar, PhD, your happiness professor, is a renowned public speaker and thought leader whose expertise spans brain science, behavioral health, economics, politics, culture, and religion. He holds a master's degree in international political economy from Columbia's University School of International and Public Affairs. Over the years, Dr. Jay has shared his powerful insights and proven strategies for happiness with hundreds of university students, thousands of radio listeners, and vast audiences throughout the U.S. and international. He is also the author of Brain, Body, and Being, and is frequently featured in media stories revealing how to overcome life's challenges and how to tap into the inner power and innate potential for your happy brain. In my testimonial in his latest book, I state that perhaps one of the most important questions he poses is, what is happiness to you? Answering that question gives you a running start in discovering the secret of your happy brain that he relays in his book. Dr. Jay has a Rumi quote in his introduction, which is one of my favorites. The wound is the place where light enters. Dr. Jay?
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for this beautiful invitation to be here. And I want to just say first thanks to Greg, everyone here at the Aspen Chapel, to Lexi, to the Aspen Center for Living Peace, and everyone who's made this possible. But mostly, I really want to thank you for being here this morning. As Lexi mentioned, I have a very strong academic background, but I'll share with you my personal story as to how I got to become the happiness professor, and it really has nothing to do with my academics. As Lexi mentioned, had a very driven education. You went to the right schools, got the right GPA, right resumes, etc. But all of that miserably failed to help me face the most difficult traumatic experience of my life. At the age of 27, in the summer of finishing my first year of graduate school at UCLA, I received a call a Monday evening in July of 1994 from my father informing me that my mother had just died from suicide. So all of my academic training, all of my professional qualifications didn't mean anything in the face of utter grief and utter devastation of the loss of my mother, specifically to a death by suicide. I say this because there is, in my belief, not just someone who studies, investigates the science of a happy brain. I really investigate, I think, maybe for this audience, I think the title of the book can be Science of a Happy Spirit, Science of a Happy Soul. Because that's really what I was seeking, that sense of comfort, that sense of how can I overcome this deep and profound sense of loss that I've experienced in my life. And so I'll share with you something that I find to be very interesting, that many of you hopefully might also find to be of value. The ancient Greek word psyche, or psyche in the ancient Greek, many of us, in the word psychology or psychiatrist, many of us, I think, have come to interpret this word psyche as mind. But to the ancient Greeks, psyche meant soul. So a psychologist is one who studies the soul. A psychiatrist is a healer of the soul. And so this is what spirituality and religion does. As Lexi and I met at Chapman University, and I've just been very grateful to have been given a new appointment there, the Director of Contemplative Practices and Wellbeing at Chapman University. And so I find that we are fundamentally, as human beings, driven by a deeper calling. And I say this because all the ancient spiritual wisdom traditions understood the power of the spirit, the power of the soul. There are many words and many languages to talk about this, but there's some divine, innate spiritual essence that we all carry within us. One of the courses I teach, as Lexi mentioned, is the happiness course, but another course I teach is science and religion. I like to see where the integration of science and spirituality really intersect and the value it has for society. And one thing that I share with my students in that class on the very first day is that we humans are fundamentally meaning-making creatures, or meaning-seeking creatures, meaning-seeking creatures. We seek meaning in our lives, even in the face of tragedy and obstacles and grief. This is where we, as human beings, I think, excel at more so than any other creatures. We always want to find that deeper sense of meaning in our life. And this really, I think, for me, is my personal story, how grief and suffering have a very integral role in our happiness. I think our society, especially in our hedonistic, pleasure-seeking society, we tend to have a great amount of fear or resistance, probably is a better word, against pain. Whether it's physical pain, the first thing we want to do is maybe just medicate it and ignore and try to bypass it. I think the same is also true for our spiritual pain or existential pain. I think we, as a society, have forgotten the value that spiritual or existential pain can actually give to us. Raise your hand here if any of you have ever broken a bone in your body. Okay. Raise your hand if any of you have ever had the flu. Winter, Colorado, pretty almost do. Well, there's a really I study science. I study the brain. I study our brain, body, and being. And as you might know, if you have a flu, your body will create a resistance to that virus in the future. We've also studied biologically, if you break a bone, when that bone mends, it becomes stronger. The same analogy can be used for our spiritual, emotional, psychological, existential struggles. I cannot be standing here in front of you all here today without the grief and the utter suffering that I experienced 25 years ago, my mother's suicide. It was, we talk about, in many traditions, the word calling. I never knew this would be my calling, to speak around the world talking about how we can experience a sense of deeper happiness, a deeper sense of meaning. And in many ways, as Lexi mentioned, when we met at Chapman last year, she said, you have to come and speak at the Aspen Chapel. I said, I'd love to come speak here and be part of the Aspen's, the Center for Living Peace. And then it kind of morphed into this larger, wonderful week-long series of speaking engagements at the high school, at YPO, at Explorer Booksellers. But this, for me, in many ways, is the most significant and meaningful of my talks, because I'm not really talking about the brain science as much as I am here, but really about my own experience and how I came to embrace my own suffering and ultimately my own happiness. I think there's I know on the paper at the handout today, I think it's that the Thomas Jefferson quote from the Constitution of the United States: all men are endowed with the equal ability for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'll share with you something that's in the book as well. It's in, I think, chapter 1 of the book. Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote, or the founding fathers and founding mothers, when they were developing American democracy, and they were trying to, this was an experiment, American democracy in the late 1700s. And one thing that Thomas Jefferson, he wrote and rewrote the Declaration of Independence several times. And in the earlier versions of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson left out the word pursuit. It was just life, liberty, and happiness. But then Thomas Jefferson ultimately decided he needed to put in the word pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I say this because happiness is not a promise. Happiness is a practice. We have to practice it. And this is where spirituality and religion offer a profound vehicle for making that possible. I can talk all day long, which I do in lecture, about the brain science, but as I reveal in the book, I'm trying to expose a more holistic understanding of both pain and suffering and trauma and what happiness is. And this new model that I reveal in the book is looking at trauma and pain, but also healing in a biological, psychological, social, and spiritual lens. I think it's that the last part, the spiritual, which I think is the emphasis and focus for today. So I'll share with you, I think, a nice analogy, since we're here in Colorado, amidst the mountains. And this is something I actually read someplace else. This is adapted from something else. I'm not taking credit for this as being my own. Society, and this relates to my story as well. Society told me when I was growing up that happiness was externally based. So get a high GPA. I did all that in high school. President of the National Honor Society, most likely to succeed. Blah 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 blah. Went to the top 20 university, got into a master's at Ivy League school, et cetera, et cetera. But this is something I think that all of us need to really understand, is that society tells us that success and happiness come from external goals. So the analogy I use is, it's like trying to climb to the top of the mountain. Being here in Colorado, I think it's a wonderful metaphor to use to say that. Society says, get to the pinnacle of the mountain and you'll be happy. But many of us who achieve and get to the summit of this mountain don't achieve happiness. We don't experience it because there's something deeper. And for those of us, I think many of you in this room, I think, would qualify for that, myself included. We get to the top of the first mountain that society says, when you get to the summit of this mountain, you will be happy. But many of us peer off into distance and see there's a second mountain, which is even taller and more magnificent and more beautiful than the first mountain. But in order to get to that second mountain, which is the true calling of our, of our happiness, we have to traverse through the valley. And this is the valley of darkness that so many spiritual traditions have taught it, whether it's in the Christian tradition, the Buddhist tradition, the Islamic tradition, the Jewish tradition. Every spiritual figure has had to undergo the walk into the darkness, the walk into the valley, if you will. And it's through the suffering, it's through the grief that we attain and arrive at the second mountain. So what is the second mountain? This is the second mountain of our true spirit. This is the pinnacle of the second mountain isn't about finding happiness in the external world. It's finding that happiness and that blessedness, as we talk about in the Beatitudes, in the internal. That sense of finding meaning in our life, that sense of finding purpose, finding our core values and living them in authenticity and compassion and kindness into the world. I always say the first mountain is about the me, the second mountain is about the we. It's about us. Who are we as a species, as a humanity? How can I help my fellow humankind in the world? So I feel very strongly that in order to get to that second mountain, and I'm not saying that I've reached the summit of that mountain yet, but I'm getting there. I think all of us are in some way. As I like to say, happiness is not a destination, it's a direction. So most of us find that sense of calling, that sense of feeling driven to something beyond just our individual life, a calling perhaps that is in service to others, which all the religious spiritual traditions have talked about. Our true happiness comes knowing that our life is, we leave a legacy in the world. And that legacy can be our children, it can be writing a book, it can be doing something simple as expressing more kindness into the world. But ultimately, I find that happiness for me isn't so much about the accumulation of material possessions. It's about finding that sense of what brings me meaning in my life. What brings that deeper sense of purpose. And so I like to actually quote to you something, if I may, from my book. And Lexi was really kind enough to quote this quote by Rumi, which I'd like to say it again because it is in my opinion also one of my favorite quotes as well. And it comes from the introduction of the book. The wound is the place where the light enters you. And it really is. You know, I never could have thought in the moment, in the wake of my mother's suicide, that such a deep and profound, heartbreaking, traumatic wound would be an opportunity for the light of grace to come through, for that light of spirit, the light of compassion to come through. I truly believe that I could not be standing here today without having traversed through that valley of suffering, that valley of darkness, that valley of pain. And for those of you who know Carl Jung, the psychologist, he believes that our greatest purpose in life is to experience a sense of wholeness, to experience that deep and profound sense of integration of the spirit on all levels of our being. But in order to do that, we have to embrace the shadow. We have to embrace the darkness. Sometimes what you call God, universe, spirit, says, knowing that this is something that you have chosen, that this path towards wholeness, sometimes we don't know the means in which the path to wholeness manifests. In the moment, we can never truly understand the ways in which God or Spirit drives us toward that sense of wholeness. But in retrospect, we can see this. And so there's another quote I'd like for you. Actually, there's one more quote I want you to just to share with you, because I think it's also very valuable for this this talk today. How many of you here have heard of Parker Palmer? Quite a few of you have. So he's a Christian, I think he's Quaker author and spiritual figure. And he has a beautiful, wonderful quote that I want to share with you, because I think it really, for me, helped me understand the true nature of grief and suffering. And he quotes to say, "The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed, to be seen, heard, and companioned exactly as it is." So I think this really, for me, embodies how I have come to be the person I am today, but also to understand that sometimes we can't always fix our pain. There's no quick cure sometimes, even fixing other people's pain and suffering. But there's one gift that we can do that is the most powerful form of healing. And that is to simply witness and just be present. The strongest words you can ever say to someone undergoing grief or tragedy is not "I'm sorry for you," it's "I'm here for you." And it's in that vein that all of us can be here for each other. You know, all of us are, I know very clearly that Aspen and this area has ravaged by a lot of suicide and mental illness, mental health issues. So sometimes we just don't know, what we can do. But the most powerful gift I think that God gives us as humans is simply to know that we are there for others, or to have others know that we are here for them as well. That is the power of healing in many ways. So I know we have a lot to share after our break. So I think maybe as one way of perhaps ending today's talk today is to share with you another beautiful quote that I feel I think is very valuable for us. And this is a quote from a 13th century Buddhist monk called Nichiren from the Japanese Buddhist tradition. And it says, "If one lights a fire for others, it will also brighten one's own way." Sometimes we need to understand that we have that light within us, even if it sometimes can be dampened or maybe veiled by all the suffering and tragedy and trauma. But as I like to say, never be afraid to let your light shine forth fully and brightly, because the world would be a much dimmer place without you in it. Together, all of our light can become a beacon to illuminate humanity into a brighter future. So thank you very much. Short and sweet.
Thank you so much. We look forward to being with you after the break as well, back up here. Very grateful. And I might want to thank all the people who are live streaming with us today. And there we are at this place during the offering. And as you have heard, that material things and money is not the answer to happiness. So you can give some of that away now to the chapel, because it will make the chapel a lot happier. Obviously, it is very true, money, but we still need to exist as well. So it does play a role. We thank you for your gifts and offering. And I'm going to take a little risk here. The chapel makes a big difference in people's lives. We hear stories of it over and over again, and that's why our giving to this whole in this community makes such a major difference. Michael and Elaine Bonds have a daughter who was part of our Tuesday schools, and Elaine was directing it, Liana Bonds. Shoot. She sent an email saying her spiritual journey began here at the chapel. It's made a big difference in her life, so she pursued it when she went, not only your daughter, but Leanne went to Chapman as well, and took a course from Dr. Kumar, all this full circle. And do you remember Leanna Bonds? Yes, very well. She started here, and she thanked us for our journey here, and now she pursued it at Chapman with you, and she's very grateful, and I hope you're listening online as well. Leanna, thank you. Thank you for your gifts. Susan. Thank you. Thank you all. Will you join with me in this sending forth in our bulletin? Together, may we walk the spiritual path of justice, speak words of love, live the selfless deed, tread gently upon this earth, and fill the world with love and compassion. Together, may the God who dances in creation, who embraces us with divine love, who shakes our lives like thunder, bless us, drive us out with power to fill the world with faith, hope, and love. This next song is requested by Dr. J. Kumar.
And I think you all, or almost everybody here knows it, or you will by the end, and so please join me. See what we got here? How's that? Okay. Oh, well. Love, 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 love. Nothing you can do that can't be done. Nothing you can sing that can't be sung. Nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. It's easy. Tell us how. All you need is love. All you need is love. All you need is love. Love. Love is all you need. There's nothing you can make that can't be made. No one you can save that can't be saved. Nothing you can do, but you can learn how to be you in time. It's easy. All you need is love. All you need is love. All you need is love. Love. Love is all you need. All you need is love. All you need is love. All you need is love. Love. Love is all you need. There's nothing you can know that isn't known. Nothing you can see that isn't shown. Nowhere you can be that isn't where you're meant to be. It's easy. All you need is love. All you need is love. All you need is love. Love. Love is all you need. All you need is love. Everybody now. All you need is love. All together now. All you need is love. Love. Love is all you need. 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 Love is all.
Thank you, Ellen. And John Lennon, I believe. You wrote that for John? No. But speaking of more connections, Ellen's brother, Steve Stapenhorst, gave me a tour of New York many, many years ago for about 4 or 5 days. We ended at Riverside Church. Reverend William Sloane Coffin gave this benediction. May God give you grace never to see yourself short. Grace to risk something big for something good. Grace to remember that the world is now too dangerous for anything but truth and too small for anything but love. Go in peace.